introduce our next speaker, next guest. She's absolutely amazing. I'm really happy that she found time to be with us today. And I mean Scilla Elworthy. Scilla is 3 times Nobel Prize nominee for her work with Oxford Research Group to develop effective dialogue between nuclear weapon policymakers worldwide and their critics. She now leads the Business Plan for Peace to help prevent violent conflict and build sustainable peace throughout the world, because it is possible. Based on her latest book, The Business Plan for Peace, Building a World Without War, and The Mighty Heart, How to Transform Conflict. Scilla founded Peace Direct in 2002 to fund, promote and learn from local peace builders in conflict areas. She was awarded by Nivano Peace Prize in 2003 and advised Peter Gabriel, Archbishop Desmond Tutu and Sir Richard Branson in setting up the Elders. Her TEDx talk on nonviolence has been viewed by over 1.5 million people, and I'm sure it will be viewed much more after today's speech. And Scilla will be interviewed by Agnieszka Snarska, and special thanks to Agnieszka, who helped us with inviting Scilla to become a part of this event. So this is one of the best, the most interesting women I've ever had a chance to meet. So please watch the Scilla's talk with us. Agnieszka.
Welcome and thank you so much for accepting our invitation to talk about the leadership qualities that can improve the way the world is led. You have tested them in some most challenging circumstances. At Russell Reynolds Associates, we have seen an evolution of leadership priorities being accelerated by pandemic. Our conversation with leaders revealed the critical meaning of self-awareness, strategic bravery, compassion, and authenticity. I want to start our conversation with reading how you describe your latest book, Mighty Heart. Here you will find practical, non-technical guidance for how to build your mighty heart, because the heart is the secret to all transformation. In this guidebook, you will build the capacity and skills to have courageous conversations, to engage your feminine intelligence, to understand how to work with and tame your inner critic, how to use anger as a fuel for transformation, and most importantly, how to develop presence. Is that the leadership toolbox in a nutshell?
Well, Agnieszka, I'm completely in agreement with your opening statement about the need amongst our leaders today for self-awareness, authenticity, and basing their strategy on human connections. Because top-down leadership doesn't work anymore. People are so informed in all sorts of different ways that they need to be able to detect the real, genuine qualities of those who lead them. And so the more direct and the more open a leader can be, the more successful they will be in convincing and reaching, particularly younger voters. This is really important. So I also discover, working with unknown leaders in conflict countries all over the world, some of the best people I've ever met, I noticed that those who have really practiced self-awareness, self-reflection, and facing their own fear, these are the people who are able to be present when disaster strikes. And I would recommend that to any leader in any place in the world, because leaders who have not faced their own fear are the ones who have knee-jerk reactions who respond without any feeling for what the other side needs, and therefore are very unsuccessful in building and maintaining a peaceful country and a peaceful environment and a peaceful company.
What you just said about facing our own fear and about understanding others leads us to the transformational power of the listening skills you have been advocating for many years.
Yes, exactly. We all think we're good leaders. And when I was called in to coach the global leadership team of one of the biggest luxury companies in the world, I said to them, we're going to need to attend to your listening skills. And they all said, oh, no, we're brilliant listeners. We listen all the time. That's not a problem. And I said, okay, well, we'll just check. So I put them through an exercise that I can tell you about now. And they were shocked at how little they listen. Because most people, especially when you're faced with something tense or something difficult, what we do is when somebody else is speaking, we think about what we're going to say. We think about my point of view instead of really listening to their point of view. So this is what I recommend to anybody, whether you have a family quarrel or you have difficulty in your community or in your workplace or even at government level. This is what works really well. You say to the person with whom you are in dispute, would you be willing? Those 4 words are the key words. Would you be willing to spend half an hour with me, just the 2 of us, and we will sit opposite, look at each other, and each talk for 5 minutes about our side of the conflict, what we feel about it. For the first 5 minutes, I will listen to you while you do that. And I'm asking you to speak in the first person, not just pointing finger or accusing. And I will listen to you so carefully that at the end of the 5 minutes, I will repeat back to you what I've heard you say, and also the feelings that I guess are behind what you feel and what you're saying. And then we'll change over. And I will speak for 5 minutes and you will listen and then feed back to me what you've heard. And I can guarantee that in this process, you move from the mind that says, I'm right and she's wrong, to the heart that says, oh my goodness, is that how she feels? And when you have that connection, which is not mental and argumentative as to who's right, it's more, oh my goodness, this is where we are. Then you have a bridge over which you can cross to begin to reach some agreement. And sometimes it takes a long time, and you have to be a really good listener to listen in that way. And it's really good to practice it with your family.
Scilla, the process you described brings the memory of intimate discussions we had with so many leaders at the beginning of pandemic. They shared the feeling of losing control over the things we all believe to control so well. They also felt more stability, having shifted their attention from the brain to being present in the moment and focusing on their own actions. What can we learn from your experience of working in much less predictable circumstances than the ones we face today?
Well, I do believe this, the success in this question depends on a daily practice of self-reflection. In this case, real leadership depends on a daily practice of self-reflection, of self-knowledge. And that can be anything. It can be a quiet period of contemplation. It can be a walk in nature every day. It can be even gardening. It can be listening to music. But anything that gives you that space in your day to self-inspect and say, what did I do today? What was that disagreement I had? What was it really about? What is my darker side that I need to attend to that came jumping out there? And that daily practice is what builds a real leader. And I can give you a supreme example. As you know, Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in jail on Robben Island before he came out in 1989. And he strengthened his capacity for self-inspection, the awareness of other people, the awareness of feelings as well as mental processes, to such an extent that he was able to convince his colleagues returning from overseas, where they were being offered all kinds of weapons to have a civil war in South Africa, he was able to convince his black colleagues to enter negotiations with the white government, which, as you know, was one of the most brutal governments the world has ever seen. So the skills that you practice with any kind of books, there's so many masses of books now that you can purchase to work on yourself. The more you practice that, the stronger your internal compass, your internal sense of direction can be honed, can be built, so that when the panic strikes, when the crisis erupts, you have a solid basis of knowing who you are, what you're able to do, and what others are able to do.
Brave leaders look inside. Scilla, you often relate to the need of leading with grace and resilience, and to feminine wisdom, which is so needed to address today's challenges. Can we talk about feminine leadership?
One of the reasons we've got to this place in time, and the stress and the anxiety and the technological dominance of the world we live in, a lot of people attribute that to what we would call yang intelligence, yang as opposed to yin. And yang intelligence is practiced by men and women, but yin intelligence, what you might call feminine intelligence, is practiced mainly by women, but also totally available to men. So I can just give you a couple of the qualities of feminine intelligence. One is listening skills. We do find that the yin approach is much more open to really listening to others, because it gives you a huge advantage when you can put yourself in the skin of another person. That really enables you to see what way you can resolve a problem. But secondly, the second skill I really commend and recommend is interconnectedness. That is the feeling that we are all one. Desmond Tutu, the Archbishop with whom I worked to build the elders, has a wonderful expression for it. It's called Ubuntu in Zulu. This means I am because you are. In other words, even everything I do has an effect on others. Even some people say my thoughts have an effect on others. But certainly everything we do in regard to the planet has now a huge effect on others. For example, our disposal of plastic and so on. So it's no longer just a question of the British expression, every man for himself. No, that's dead. That is so passé, so 20th century. The world we live in is every person responsible for others. I am because you are. And so that interconnectedness is vital. The other one will probably surprise. There are actually 6 qualities of feminine or yin intelligence that I could go through, but we probably don't have time. But the third one I would surprise you with is intuition. When I have overridden my intuition, I've made the worst mistakes of my life. And very often we do that. We have a kind of a gut feeling. It's not a brain feeling, it's a gut feeling. This is right, or that's the right person. And if we obey that gut feeling and check it out, then I feel we make better decisions. Because then we're not just frenzied working things out with our really rather limited brains. We're using the whole person to reach a wise decision. And wisdom is what we're short of at the moment. I just look at the leadership of countries, including my own, and wisdom is almost absent.
What you are saying resonates very, very well with what we observe so often, that the feeling of separation weaknesses our ability to lead ourselves and to lead others. I wanted to return to sustainable leadership you have mentioned earlier. We recently published a piece of work in partnership with UNGC on sustainable leadership. Could you share with us your perspective on what makes a sustainable leader?
Well, two things. One is that a truly sustainable leader will nourish her or himself. In other words, take time in the day to take exercise, to have a good diet, to take these periods of quietness that I've suggested. These are vital, I would say. I don't think any leader should just be so fraught and so desperately rushing from one thing to another all day. They can't make good decisions in that environment. So taking time, at least half an hour twice a day, to have exercise, to have quietness, to catch up with oneself. And the other thing, of course, is to insist throughout the company or the department or the government that you're leading, or the school or the university, to insist that every sustainable practice is put into action for disposal of waste, for which materials you're using in your products, what's happening in your canteen, whether the food you're offering is healthy, and whether you're using local products for nourishing your people, and so on and so on. I mean, leaders in those respects of sustainability just have to wake up and catch up. Otherwise, they'll be left behind.
Our research shows that most leaders experience defining moments in their career in which their beliefs and their actions are challenged. We refer to this as a moment of truth. That is how they call it. This experience has framed their leadership philosophy. Did you have such a moment?
Oh yes, I did. When I was 13, back in 1956, I watched on a grainy old black and white TV in my parents' living room Soviet tanks rolling into Budapest and crushing young people like me who were trying to push the tanks back. And I was so upset that I rushed upstairs and started packing my suitcase. And my mother came up and said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm going to Budapest now. And she said, what for? And I said, there's something so horrible happening there that I have to go. And she said, don't be so silly. And I burst into tears. And bless her, she got it. She understood how important this was to me. That, such violence was being perpetrated on innocent people, that it had to be stopped. So she said to me, listen, you're only 13. You have no training. You can't help anybody until you're older and better trained. And so she said, if you will just unpack your suitcase, I will see to it that you get trained. And she did. She sent me off age 16 to work in a holiday home for concentration camp survivors. And then I took myself off to work in various refugee camps and orphanages and so on to learn the trade, to learn the skill of conflict resolution and conflict prevention on the job.
It is an amazing story. What I'm very respectful to is that in the age of 13, you were able to recognize that trigger with the clarity and to follow through your entire life.
Well, I think I was one of the lucky ones, Agnieszka, because many people don't really know what to do with their lives, and I simply had no choice. That was it. That was what I was going to do. But when young people come to me now, as many do, and say the world is in such a mess, what on earth can I do? I feel helpless, depressed, and so on. So I tell them 3 questions. First question, what breaks your heart? Because where the passion is, it doesn't matter if it's what breaks their heart is wounded animals or refugees or seeds of wild flowers. It doesn't matter. Whatever breaks their heart is where their energy is. Second question, what are your skills? Are you good at social media? Are you good at crowdfunding? Are you good at getting people who want to work with you? Match your skills to what breaks your heart, and there you will have your path in life. And people will gravitate to you as they do to everyone who is motivated, inspired, energetic, and what's the word? Reaching out in a magnetic. That's what we want, magnetic. And so I believe that is what our young people, so well educated, so much better nourished than we ever were, and that's what will enable them to really put their skills to building a much, much better and safer world than we have now.
As we look to the next generations, how do you believe we should be preparing them to be sustainable leaders of the future?
I feel that every young person in their training course, whether at their company or in their university or college or school, should be introduced to the facts on climate change, on the environmental changes we're witnessing, and not just told how terrible things are, but given clues as to what they can do. For example, if somebody's really interested in marine biology or what's happening under the sea, then they should know what a huge difference a good diver can make. So people should be given not just the frightening facts, but also the opportunities. So I do believe that the other key part for young leaders is, and I can't stress it too much, and it's very clear in the Mighty Heart training, that it's this daily practice of self-knowledge. Because in so many instances, we're unprepared for being frightened. It sounds a funny thing to say, but we're mostly driven or lured towards what is easy and pleasing and nice songs and nice dancing and so on. But we don't prepare for what will scare us. So I believe it's essential that we look at our shadow side, because all of us have a shadow side, a dark side, the nastier part of our nature, if you like. And unless we examine that, it comes up to interfere in the most critical moments. So what I do is when I get woken up by my inner critic, and all of us have an inner critic, when I get woken up at night by my inner critic, I have a process which you can read about in the Mighty Heart, of a process for actually entering into a dialogue with that inner critic. And that's my methodology for getting to know my shadow. So that when I feel triggered by somebody else or something that happens, and I feel triggered, when you or I feel triggered, we know, uh-oh, something going on inside me that I need to look at. And then a dialogue with your inner critic, and you can learn how to do it very easily. It's not an easy thing to do, but you can learn the process. It's quite a courageous thing to do. But I believe it's essential for any leader.
You are almost saying that we need to hold our shadow side gently, where we are so often the harshest critics to ourselves. You are saying that we are not prepared to deal with the ambiguity unless we examine our dark side. The whole process feels like entering the secret garden.
Yes, exactly. And I love the fact that you mentioned secret garden, because I do believe that going to some favorite place in nature, whether it's a beach or whether it's a park or even on your street, being with a tree, that's really important to touch in with nature every day.
What you are saying about the nature resonates with me very deeply. But we are also part of the systems that, as you said, are often not based on wisdom. Do you believe that leaders can influence their environments despite of the weaknesses of the system?
Of course they can. Of course. It takes courage. They often have to stick their necks out. That's what we say in English, stick your neck out. But they need to have done the inner work. Otherwise, they're just preaching. And we don't listen to people who preach at us and say, you should do this. That doesn't work. What they need to do is make sure that the people surrounding them are trained in the way I've described. And we're just about to run a course on how to do that, which I'll come back to at the end. But if they see to it that the people they work with in their department or company or school or college are trained, and then concentrate with colleagues on what are the values of our group, our company, our school. And to really be clear, not just something nice to put on a piece of paper and on the wall and forget about, but what are our real values? What would we go on the line for? What would we put our necks on the block for? And is that integrity? And if so, what does it mean? Is it openness, which is a great quality? What does that mean? What does this mean for the practice in our institute, in our department, whatever it is? And then you're in a position to speak. You're in a position to go on the media and say, this is how we do it. We'd like to share our skills with you. Or this is the change in the law that we feel is necessary. And this is why, because we did the research. We're not just shouting. So always to back up the change you want with facts and knowledge, but also with a gathering constituency of people who will sign up to it. In other words, that if you want to change in the litter laws, what's done with everything that's thrown on the ground in a city, if you want to change in that, then you have to work out how it's going to be done and who's going to do it, what's going to cost. You've got to be really practical.
Thank you for saying that. Everything what you shared today is in fact a great opportunity if we step up. And your life proves how powerful this impact could be if we respond. Thank you so much for being with us and sharing, Scilla. That was touching, joyful experience. We wish you all the best.
And I'm happy to meet you, and I really hope to come back to Poland one day soon. I came not so long ago, a couple of years ago, to a festival, and it was wonderful. I really loved it. I've got a great admiration for the country and the people. And I would love to invite, if I don't know how quickly you can extend this invitation, but very soon, on the 6th of October, we're starting the first episode of a 10-week online course on the mighty heart, how to transform conflict. And every session, 5 of which I will lead, is very, very practical, hands-on, the kind of thing I've been talking about, but people will be able to practice it in their own environment as their own experiment.
We will extend this invitation with a great pleasure.